Hi everyone, this is Dragon GGY and this is the operator Hindsight for the welfare operator Lessing. Lessing is a 6-star dreadnought in the guard class, trait of the archetype. Well, they block one enemy. They have a 1.5 second attack interval which used to be the slowest in guard, but now there are crushers at 2.5 seconds and earth shakers at 1.8 seconds. Before Lessing, there were Skadi and Diels-Alder as the previous 6-star dreadnoughts. Looking at the stats distribution, Lessing gets a thicker HP pool, weaker defense, but overall is still in line with other members. Dreadnoughts are the earliest concept of duelers in Archetype. They have one-on-one high DPH damage, certain survival bonus like HP recovery so that they get in and stay alive until the job is done. However, like I said in the Viviana episode, in the current state of the game, any dueler would really need some unique and more importantly, viable designs to even be considered in a 12 ops team. So now let's take a look at Lessing's unique design starting from his talents. Talent 1, when blocking, take 35% less physical and arch damage from enemies not blocked by him. So this description is actually quite accurate. It really is effective on any damage as long as it's not from the block target, barring true damage. So that includes non-traceable source damage, friendly damage from Arc, and environmental damage like the burning reeds, which is arch damage. Just know that the damage from Warfarin skill 2 is HP loss, so that's not a damage and is not mitigated. This is a pretty solid survival talent. The number is also decent and it does make sense to reduce external damage when dueling. Next we have talent 2. When taking damage, attack plus 12%, 16% at potential 5 for 15 seconds. Does not stack. Again, this talent can be triggered by any damage other than the HP loss we just talked of. Duration refreshes every time he takes damage, and you can tell from the purple glow on his sword that the talent is currently active. This is a very crucial attack modifier for Lessing, which he doesn't have with skill 1 and skill 3, and for a dueler who needs to pick up enemies and block them, it's not very hard to have it triggered, but unfortunately the number is also not very generous. For comparison, Skadi has a 16% attack modifier that is always active and can share to all the Abyssal Hunters. Now about his module, he has the Dreadnought Axe module giving a 115% attack scale when attacking blocked enemies. The talent upgrades give him 8% more on talent 2 and that's it. Unfortunately, this module is one of the worst ever went down in history. If you look at the comparison with Skadi and Diels-Alder's modules, the attribute of this module just makes zero sense. 30 attack for an archetype with 11k base attack is just criminally low. So overall, base effect at the end of the day is still a very good thing to have in order to compensate for Lessing's damage. It's just integral to have that if you ever plan to use him. For upgrades, it's just so terrible. The talent upgrades is the typical plus 5 to 10, and then another 3% for a total of 8%, commonly found in 5-star modules. I honestly don't know what he had done to deserve this, and I do not recommend the upgrades unless you absolutely like him. Now for the skills, my recommendation is skill 2 mastery 3 slightly above skill 3 mastery 3 depending on if you want him for the halodrop tasks or you want a team around him. And skill 1 mastery is not recommended. Don't trust the AFK skills for short-handed operators that also only hit 1. So skill 1 increases the attack of the next attack to 290%, 0/2 power strike gamma. Just a very generic skill that doesn't involve any survival. Like I said, block 1, attack 1, short-handed AFK skills never get you anywhere, not recommended. By the way, the stats calculations shown here are always the optimal condition, meaning it's always blocking and his talent 2 is always active. Skill 2, when activated, talent 1 effect increased to 2.2 times, attack plus 60%, attacks hits twice. This is a passive on-deploy skill like Skadi and Diels-Alder skill 2 with a duration of 24 seconds. If you look at the stats below, it has a formidable total damage as well as DPS of 3270. During skill, Lessing only takes 23% damage from sources not blocked by him, which is also huge. But the high DPS from this skill comes from the double hit. The DPH, unfortunately, is notably lower than the other two 6-star Dreadnoughts, so his performance unfortunately decays rapidly with enemies' defense or when his own attack goes down. So when you compare the DPS and total damage, Lessing only gets his advantage for enemies with less than 800 defense. At the same time, the said enemy also can't be too threatening because the skill only gives him survival against external damage. Therefore, at the end of the day, its best shot would be against these medium defense enemy with medium aggressiveness, surrounded by heavy ranged or environmental threats. In this kind of situations, Lessing shows a really outstanding performance compared to Scotty and Diels-Alder. Skill 3 becomes immune to negative effects. HP plus 110%, attack deals 220% attack as physical damage when attacking a block target. Skill can be used when he's in status effect, which will deal 600 arts damage to himself, then removes the status. This is a 30/40 20-second auto recovery manual skill. The skill gives him a big attack scale but no attack modifier at all, so the DPS is not as high. Lessing has close to 9000 HP when the skill is active. So let's go over the details behind the mechanics before we analyze. First, the self-damage that recovers him from status effect is actual art damage, not HP loss, so it will trigger talent 2 to give him the attack bonus, which is great. This damage can be reduced by talent 1 if his blocking can be reduced by teammates either from resistance or sanctuary. It can also be increased by enemies who give you fragile, although that's fairly rare. It can be completely negated by barrier or dodge from teammates and relics. It can also kill Lessing, so beware of that. The logic of this sequence is that Lessing will deal 600 damage to himself, then increases max HP, so in the end he will leave a HP gap of 600 times 2.1, so he has effectively lost 1260 HP instead of just 600, which is kinda awkward. For the immune part, other than the most common stun, cold, and freeze, he's also immune to any debuff acknowledged by the game that can be resisted. There aren't a lot of them, first being the Burning Breath debuff from Tallulah, as well as some abilities from some of the Invitation to Wine enemies. So, where is this skill used? I see two main situations. One is actually buffing him for damage. Lessing skill 3 has two big attack scales, the 115% from base, 220% from skill, but no attack modifiers other than his talent 2, which leaves space for attack buffs. When we compare damage under the same Warfarin skill 2 buff, Lessing deals the highest DPH out of himself, Scardy, and Diels-Alder. It just requires his target to be blocked for the damage to be possible. As for being a countermeasure to enemies that causes status effect, it honestly isn't too reliable. I found it common for him to either lack the damage to kill off his target, or he does not survive from the target, and still needs quite the external help. Finally, this is a 20-second skill with a 40-second cooldown, so immune coverage isn't that high either. Looking back at his overall design, he's a dueler that measures in survival against external damage and status effect. You can holo drop him with skill 2 or use his skill 3 to defend against status effect enemy in a team environment. Whether or not this is niche depends on your playstyle. The key problem to me is that his design tried to find a balance between damage and survival, but there are big holes in both. His talent and skills that helps him counter external damage and status effect is good, but for a dueler, he's still fragile against his dual target. He's got big attack scales, double hits that are good material to high damage, but they refrained from giving him attack modifiers which limited his offense. Finally, status effect immune sounds like a cool concept, but covering only 20 seconds in a 60-second cycle certainly doesn't make it reliable enough as a countermeasure. One thing I want to mention, which I usually don't, is that his base skill is actually very solid. After E2, he processes all material with just 3 morale, with a side product rate increase of 80%. I honestly use him all the time when I need to craft a big amount of materials. All in all, Lessing is a 6-star Dreadnought that has some interesting mechanics that add to his survival while also preserving some potential to carry out some good damage. However, the low on actual numbers, mechanics being scattered between skill 2 and skill 3 has somewhat jeopardized that concept, making the experience of trying to utilize him worse. For daily, I rate him at 3, hella dropping him on less threatening enemies, and he still gets the job done easily, while having an edge on surviving against external pressure. But in terms of damage, he's still not as competitive as the other 6-star Dreadnoughts. Status immune as his specialization remains a niche because 1, there's always some workaround, and 2, his coverage has yet to make it to the level of a reliable solution. But again, don't forget his legendary base skill. For advanced, he's at 2. The tedious part about him is the mechanism he's got isn't supported by enough numbers. In debuff environments, he's fragile even with the damage reductions and simply no impact on the damage side. In buff environments like IS, he can get the attack modifiers that he needs, but block 1 attack 1 units never had much success in this mode. Given how competitive the guard voucher is, he's just not up there for consideration. This is a graph that outlines the priority of building all the welfare 6-star operators from my perspective. The scope is only between welfare operators and should not be compared with banner operators. That said, my review is still based on the whole operator roster rather than just welfares, so you can look up the breakdown of players who are more into developing welfare operators. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.